Hello. Um, so I'm here today to talk about a bunch of stuff. Um, I'm going to start with Palestine, but it's probably going to cover a bunch of stuff that I wanted to talk about for a while now. Um, Sorry, I don't look very presentable. I'm too tired to get out of the uniform and tidy myself up. Um, yeah, and yeah, I have mentioned before that I wanted to talk about things that included Palestine, but the subjects were overlapping too much. And I noticed there was no point in talking, there wasn't much of a point in talking about instances of the problem. It would be better to talk about the problem itself, right? And then everything spiraled out of control. I wanted to make a proper video with proper script, but here we are doing another rant. So let's get started. Um, the subjects that I want to talk about, I noticed that a kind of through line that runs through all of them, I think, is that they exist as kind of a myth. We'll get to that. Regarding Palestine, there's the genocide happening, and a while back, right? We came to the 1 year of genocide threshold, and I noticed people talking about it in those terms, right? 1 year of genocide. Sorry again that I'm going to smoke. Yeah, some I did it on the last rant as well, and I'm going to do it today again. I'm sorry. And I noticed people started talking about it in those terms, 1 year of genocide, and the myth here, the the myth of genocide. Uh, it didn't. It's not 1 year. It didn't start last year. It started decades ago, right? Um, so I guess I've heard people talking about other instances of genocide, other examples in separating it in terms of slow genocide and fast genocide, right? It's slow until it isn't. What's happening now didn't start now. It started a long time ago. And the world has been aware of it for as long as it's been happening. People had been talking about it, people had been warning about it. And the situation, of course, every once in a while became the focus of discussion, the conflicts happening there. And there was always the usual misinformation campaigns happening. Uh, but the warnings were there. We knew about it. We knew where it was headed. They just ramped up the process. And of course, what's happening now, it's on a complete different scale, but I think it's important to keep in mind that all of that, right? Why? Because it's like, of course, right now the most important thing to do is to deal with the current situation. But I think it's important to keep an eye on the bigger picture, because this particular myth, it speaks to our society's inability to deal with the lead up to a genocide. Every time something like this happens, it's never overnight. There is always a very slow process before it actually, quote unquote, happens. And we usually fail to deal with that. We, not as individuals, but as a society, as a whole, the world, the governments, they fail to reckon with the warnings, with the signs. They just let it happen for various reasons, different reasons depending on the case, overlapping reasons in most of the cases. But it's always there. It's always happening somewhere. That's what that's one of the things that gets to me, right? Like, it's always happening somewhere. And the lead up is always happening somewhere. And people, there's always people screaming about it. And it just happens. Every time. And it's always the same. The counter arguments are always very similar, right? When we talk about it, before it starts, when we're talking about it, this is what they're saying, this is what they're doing, this is what they want. And of course, the other side, the people that are going to do these things, they're going to deny everything, of course, obviously, but other people too, the so-called centrists, the quote-unquote reasonable people, the grown-ups in the rooms, in all of the rooms, they're always like, they think you're an alarmist, a, I don't know, doomsayer, a, of course that's not going to happen. Of course they're not going to go that far. What, they're not the Nazis, they're not, like, and then it happens again and again. And we can't learn from any of it, apparently. We just keep doing the same shit over and over again. And we're seeing that with a bunch of stuff today. There are other warnings about other situations. I don't look very ladylike right now, even by my standards, but I'm a trans person. If you're here, you probably know that. Harmony Rose, hello. And when genocide. People brush it aside, you know. And regarding Palestine, regarding what's going on there, regarding this whole thing about when does it start, when does it actually start, that's another. I think that's the segue to another of the subjects. It's a expansion maybe of the same subject, like um, because I think it's the same framework, but for other instances. Like when we look at history, I think a lot of people, maybe most people, maybe all of us, we tend to look at big events of history as beginning and ending. I was under the impression that that was kind of a myth of finality, that things ended in history. But it's not just the end, it's the beginning too, right? And we look at things like, oh, it started here and it ended there. And that's not how it works. And of course, we can't like look at the whole history of everything every time we're talking about one thing, right? But we should keep an eye on the bigger picture. Like, one of the earliest things I wanted to talk about was the myth of Nazi defeat. Like, the Allies won World War II. Yes. And World War II started here and it ended there, right? But it didn't. Like even the beginning, even the like the even the most basic version of where does it start, it's people tend to overlook the larger conflict that was happening in Asia before everything started going to shit in Europe. But it was on the same proportions and it got enveloped in the same global conflict later. So, yeah, a lot of people tend to look at World War II as starting in Europe, but it started in Asia. And like regarding the Nazis, I still don't know if it's in English, if it's not Z or not Z, the Germans. Sorry, Germans, if there any of you in my audience. I don't mean you, of course, in particular, unless you are a Nazi. And yes, the empire, they lost World War II, right? Like that configuration of Nazism was defeated in World War II. The Third Reich was defeated in World War II. But Nazism was not defeated in World War II. Because the Nazis just kept going. It didn't. The Third Reich ended in World War II, but Nazism didn't. Right? Like we had the Nuremberg trials afterwards, and yes, it was an important landmark, and yes, we need more of that today. you know, uh, for climate fucking change. But like, I don't remember the exact number, the percentage, but I think like less than 20% of the Nazis were actually prosecuted after the war. Most of them just they were just allowed to go back to society, and not just. And I'm not saying we should have imprisoned and or killed all of them. Um, I'm not advocating for mass murder or mass incarceration, of course, but they were allowed to just go back to society and occupy positions of power and influence in politics, in education, research, as thinkers, as and Jesus, and it just keeps going. Like, do you pinky promise to not be a Nazi anymore, and that's it? And they will keep, and they will not forfeit their philosophy, their beliefs, just because the army was defeated, just because their government crumbled. They will keep teaching as best as they can. Uh, they will keep talking about it, and if, what do you think they're going to tell their children and their children's children? Uh, of course, they may not be able to just say, yes, I was a Nazi, and I'm proud of it. And sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Even when they can't, even when they don't, they will still propagate the same philosophy by other means, using other words, right? They won't just suddenly join the Rainbow Coalition. Especially considering, of course, like that they occupy positions of power. They went back into politics. They were placed by the Allies in positions of power inside Germany and outside too, right? Because the next threat was communism. So yeah, it didn't end there. Um, and it didn't. And the problem, and yes, Nazism had a fixed starting point, but the whole philosophy behind it had had existed since forever, right? Anti-Semitism was around since forever, everywhere. The the Dreyfus affair, the Russian program, I don't know how to pronounce that, programs, like it was widespread, which is one of the reasons why they were allowed to kickstart the whole thing in the first place. The American Nazi Party. God damn it. So yeah, we look at it as a compartmentalized instance of history, World War II, Nazism. But it didn't start there and it didn't end there either. And why is it important to keep an eye on that factor, right? Why is this particular myth? Why does it bother me so much? First, because it. I don't think it's first. I think it's just one thing. It allows the the losing side to propagate itself, right? Like I said, it didn't end there. They kept going. You get neo Nazis. They're not actually neo Nazis. They're not a new version of it. It's just the same thing. It's just a continuation of the same thing. It's uninterrupted. It didn't go away and then came back. It just never went away. And it's not restricted to this particular instance, to Nazis, right? Like, you had slavery, you had chattel slavery, and then you ended slavery. But the people who benefited from slavery were allowed to maintain their power and their influence, their political and economical power, and their literal power over people in many instances, where slavery just morphed into a different version of it, right? If the same people who had power over you are allowed to still have similar or identical levels of power over you, then nothing has changed. The same thing just kept going. And without that kind of reckoning, without that, without those consequences, it just keeps going. The same thing with Nazism, right? Like, the same philosophy just keeps going. United States, I'm sorry, I know you're most of my audience. You had your Civil War, and then what? And then what? What was the consequence for the losing side, for the ones who wanted to secede, who fought a fucking war to protect the right to own other people, you know? And you have, what did you call it? Shared crops, I think it was called. It's basically the same thing, right? The same people working in the same plantations, with the same lack of rights as they used to have before. And you have and then it just keeps going because that's what I said. Like, it just keeps going. It doesn't end. Jim Crow. Is that how you call it? Jim Crow laws, redlining, and everything. It just keeps going until today. You know, the racism of today is the same racism of yesterday. It's not a new instance. It's just a continuation. It's the same thing that kept going, that never went away. And going back to the Nazis, like, in the aftermath, it allows the propagation of the philosophy, of the beliefs, and in retrospect, it whitewashes a lot of things, I think, right? Like I said, like, anti-Semitism was everywhere. But now we have the Nazis. The Nazis are the bad guys. What about everybody else? Oh, everybody else fought against the Nazis. Well, not everybody, but yeah. But a lot of countries, like the United States and Russia, they both fought against the Nazis. In the end, they were both allies against the Nazis. But they both had a lot of problems with anti-Semitism, right? Russia, you know your history. And we know it too, but they're not the Nazis. So it gets washed away. Everybody gets a, what do you call it? A free, a get out of jail free card. But yeah, that's the myth of finality in history, the myth of compartmentalization in history. In Brazil, we had Japan, Brazil, you're not off the hook as well, no, in this regard. We had our junta, our dictatorship, and it was about just fizzle out. The same mentality still goes on till today. We still get people who support the dictatorship. Bolsonaro was publicly in favor of it. Here in Japan, you get the same imperial goons, like a fucking uninterrupted bloodline of rulers. Like, it's fucking insane. And I'm not talking about the emperor. No, you should look at Abe's uh, family tree. It's all in the open. It's public information. A lot of people, not everybody talks about it, but you know, the same war criminals were put in positions of power and allowed to rule Japan uninterrupted. There are some, and I think I'm kind of looking at it as myths because, like, okay, they exist as lies in our culture, in our zeitgeist. Um, in so much as, like, people are presented with the wrong information about these things, right? Misinformation is a big problem. Um, I have recently talked about Palestine with a coworker. It's a nice person, good heart, woefully misinformed, espousing all the wrong talking points. They only speak Portuguese. They have no access to information from outside of that, and it's complicated. But even when we know it, even when we have the information, we still kind of choose to believe these things. They become stories more than lies. We just choose to keep going in the same direction. We never change course. And again, individually, yes, we lack the agency, as always. I'm not blaming you or myself specifically, like individually, but and the information as well. That's another myth. Like, um, okay, this is probably going to be very, what's the word? I forgot the word. Controversial. A portion of it is going to be controversial, I think. Possibly. Okay. So Um, we entered a era of misinformation, right? And you read about and you hear about the end of truth. Truth has died, and we have killed it, Facebook and I. We hear about how we can't agree on basic facts. There was a lot of that. Um, throughout a lot of that always happens surrounding political campaigns, right? A lot of that happens. We saw a lot of that in regards to COVID. Um, we see a shitload of that in regards to climate change. The misinformation campaigns surrounding climate change is epic. It's fucking epic. Godlike. Stuff of legends. We shoot Nuremberg. One of the Koch brothers, one of the two. Okay, so 2 out of 4 Koch brothers are actual comic book villains. The ones responsible for that whole bullshit. I think one of them is dead, the other one's alive. If the other one's alive, should Nuremberg him and then give them prizes for what they have accomplished, because this information campaign that they kickstarted is fucking epic. Okay. Yeah, so the end of truth, right? To misinformation. And of course, a lot of that stems from currently a lot of that stems from social media, this new environment, these new technologies. They have accelerated the process, exacerbated the process, of course, yes, definitely, I agree. But the fact of the matter is that we have never agreed on anything. Truth was always a lie. The concept of truth, the concept of basic truth, like we all have our own truths, the things that we believe in, but that concept of basic truth, that shared reality that we're supposed to inhabit, that has always been a lie. It has never existed. You can't have a basic truth, a universal accepted truth, a shared reality, wherein a portion of the world believes the other half of the world believes the other half of the world is literally unevolved. If you have slavery on a global fucking scale, if all these countries believe that the people living in all these countries are literally less evolved than they were literally less evolved than they were, and that justified enslaving them, how is there a shared reality there? What these people believe is fundamentally opposed to what these people believe. And racism continues up to this day, you know. And the controversial portion of it, I think, personally, I think that religion is a big, it's not just a big part of that. I think it's a foundational link in the chain. Like it's not a link in the chain. It's not a part of its foundation. It may not be the cornerstone upon which everything else is built, all the lies are built upon, but it's certainly down there at the base of everything. Like today, right now, um, we can respect each other's faith. We can respect each other's right to believe and to practice their religions. I'm an atheist. But I understand, personally, I understand why religion was created, why it continued to exist, why people still believe. I understand why a lot of people just need religion. You know, there was a time when I wanted to believe. I tried very hard. I just can't. Doesn't make sense to me. For a number of reasons, I'm not going to discuss religion right now. I'm not going to discuss the merits of any particular belief, but religion as a whole. If you have one belief and your neighbor has another religious belief, if you're both from different religions, it doesn't matter how much you respect each other's rights to believe. You both have fundamental what's the word? Incompatible visions of the world, of the universe, of existence as a whole. You don't live in the same reality. I'm an atheist. If you believe, if you have a religion, any religion, we have fundamental differences in the way that we perceive reality as a whole. I respect you and your rights, and sometimes I'm even jealous of your belief. But we don't exist in the same reality. Basic truth does not exist between us. We can still come to an understanding, we can still be reasonable, civilized, but basic truth doesn't exist between us. I'm sorry. And whether you believe or not, and whatever your religion might be, this fundamental difference permeates everything. Our laws, our philosophies, our whole history is built upon our religious beliefs, whether you have them or not. If you're American, you know what I'm talking about. No? And I'm from Brazil. Latin America is a very religious portion of the world. No? One nation under God. I'm not talking about just Christians. I'm not talking about no. It's all religions. All religions. Okay. It permeates everything. Our constitutions are built upon it, basically, for better and for worse. And And we could go into discussions about morality and but we can build a moral code without religion, but that's not how it worked, and it just kept going, just like everything in history just kept going. We built upon those foundations, and we never stopped to rethink those systems without those foundations. What would it look like without it, without that baggage? We can't, because we as a society, not as individuals, but as a society, we still believe, right? The world is still a deeply religious place. Hi, it's me from not such a distant future. I realize I could have mentioned the Soviet Union in this part of the video, and I would like to mention that now and say that it could still be argued that they built the system on top of the pre-existing one, like in many ways it was a in the ways that matter for the subject at hand, the religion stuff. Enough remnants moved forward in the philosophies therein. But most importantly, like the like you don't stop believing just because the state told you to, basically. And that which survived in the interim years perpetuated itself into the post-Soviet Union configuration of the system, right? Not to mention that religion aside, when it comes to the myth of shared reality of basic truth, the incompatibility of how different people see the world, reality itself, you don't, like I said, like religion primes us for it. It's not the whole thing, but it's at the foundation of it. So in the aftermath of the revolution, the continuation of the previous systems, and the people who participated in the previous systems, you still had that dissonance in regards to just politics, i.e., how the Bolsheviks fucked over everybody else, basically, right? Different schools of thought vying for control, and how they differed from each other, and ultimately how one group trampled over the others. And yeah, that's the side note I needed to make, I guess. Okay, back to it, and you go back to the video. I'm going to make dinner now. Bye. So I see religion, faith, as a cornerstone of misinformation, of misunderstanding, because we are primed. We are raised up to, we are primed to disagree on everything, to other people, othering is an intrinsic part of our cultures. It's a fundamental aspect of how we think, of how we see the world. And it starts with that, with faith. I'm sorry. It's so much right now. Okay. Really sorry about this, as always. Well, not as always. I usually smoke when I'm talking on Patreon, but I try not to when I'm talking here on public videos on YouTube, of course, because it's fucking smoking. I don't condone this shit. It's bad for you. It's bad for me. I tried to stop many times. I just can't. And that's a bunch of myths right there. Another myth that kind of rises up from the amalgamation of these other myths is the myth of evolution. Like, we see the world, we see civilization, humanity, as an ever evolving project. Things are obviously better now than they were 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, 100 years ago. But are they? Have we collectively ever solved anything? What have we solved? What problem? What societal problem have we ever fixed? Violence, murder, rape. We still have wars. We still have genocides. We still have oppression. We still have imperialism. We still have people still die of hunger. People still die of disease. When you try to make this argument, the first thing that I think the first thing that comes to most people's minds is medicine, of course. Things are better now. Right? You used to die of everything. Oh, there goes little Johnny. He scraped his knee. Say goodbye to your little brother. He's going to die in a week or so. No? Oh, the common flu. He's sneezing. He's going to die. We have eradicated a number of diseases, which is also kind of a myth in itself, because a lot of some of the diseases we think we talk about as having been eradicated still exist in some corners of the world where healthcare can't reach. Right? Yes, things are better. We have medicine, actual medicine. It's not the vapors. It's not miasma. You're you don't need they won't bleed you to get the bad blood out of your body. Your humors are not imbalanced, you know? Jesus. We have aspirin now. Yes, yes, we do. It's great. We have penicillin. That's how we pronounce it. We have antibiotics, we have a lot of things. But if it's not available for everybody, what actually evolved there? Technology is evergreen. Evergreen is a media term. Technology is not evergreen where climate change is concerned. Technology is an ever evolving project thus far. Until we extinct ourselves out of existence, it will probably continue to be an ever evolving project. Technology will continue to evolve. But technology is not the word. Humanity isn't technology. We're not a computer. Medicine evolved, but society did not keep up with that evolution. If you don't have access to appropriate healthcare, what's the point of better medicine that you can't afford? What's the point of vaccines you can't get? Um, the myth of evolution. When at the height of COVID, there was a period of time when I would check the homepage of the World Health Organization on a almost daily basis. I know it's not healthy. I knew at the time it wasn't healthy, but I did it anyway. At first, I was just keeping an eye on the global numbers. I just wanted to see what the fuck was happening. Like, how bad is this really? There was that period of time when we were unsure that it was going to be real bad or not. Like, how bad is this going to be? What's happening, right? And I would look at those numbers and despair. The fucking plague, man. We had the plague back. Jesus Christ. When I stopped going to that webpage, that homepage, checking those numbers, because I started looking at the breakdown of those numbers, of those global numbers, by continent, by country, and you got those big numbers from these countries, and yeah, that makes sense. Oh my God, what's happening there? Why are those numbers rising so much in that particular country? What's happening? But then I noticed like double-digit numbers coming from like some countries in Africa. Very poor places, not exactly known for their robust healthcare systems. And I was like, oh, this is all bullshit. These numbers don't reflect the truth at all, right? Like, how can this country have double-digit numbers? And I kept checking to see, okay, maybe it just got started, that's why, but it's going to explode, right? And the numbers wouldn't keep up with my expectations. Um, and I was like, there's no way that's not spreading like wildfire there. They don't have the means to contain this. And I was like, yeah, this is bullshit. What's the point? the point for the people who have access to better medicine, to better healthcare, is of course to have better healthcare. But as a whole, as a society, the world didn't evolve in that regard. And like socially, um, why do you think we have like the? Of course, it depends on where you live, but the healthcare that you do get, why do you think you have that? Like, if you're not a part of the ruling class, you know, like we talked about slavery, we're talking about healthcare, and yeah, like we all get better healthcare now, but they always give you, they always give us the bare minimum to keep us in line, compliant. The medicine evolved enough that the scraps are better than the best they used to have. Subpar, almost non existent healthcare today is worlds apart from the best medicine they had 500 years ago. The kind of healthcare that kings had access to is witchcraft compared to a fucking painkiller. That's what we get. We get the scraps, you know. It's easy to give when it means nothing to you, and so long as it doesn't tip the scales against you. If the economy is doing well enough, it's easy to give just a little bit, just enough, so that people won't start building guillotines. And we get more when we fight for it, and then we get that more, that little bit more that we want, that we deserve, that we need. But then they always push back because they always only ever give you as little as they can. So you fight for better rights, working rights, and then you get your weekends, and then you get your 8-hour shifts, and then you get your overtimes, and then you get your paid leaves, paid sick leaves, and then they fight back against it and they take back as much as they can. Because we didn't evolve anything. Society didn't evolve at all, ever. In any fucking regard. That myth of continuation, of finality, of things starting and ending, combined with this myth of evolution, there's the ruling class. Like, the ruling class is an entity on its own. It's an The ruling class is an eternal ruler. We look at revolutions, big moments of history when everything changed, a paradigm shift. You know, down with the king. But it doesn't matter, like historically. it doesn't matter what changed because it didn't. That's a lie. We, when history happens and things change, we aren't actually changing things. We're just rearranging things. We are rearranging the pieces on the board, but the board is still the same fucking game. Doesn't matter if it's a democracy, a dictatorship, a monarchy. Doesn't matter if you have czars or kings or prime ministers. It doesn't matter if it's the merchants or the fucking tech bros. The ruling class as an entity continues to exist uninterrupted. The individuals that comprise the ruling class get shifted around, but a group of people ruling the rest of us continues to exist. They continue to shape the world to their benefit at our expense. The systems that are put in place are always designed to maintain the balance of power, whoever might be in power. The system doesn't care who's at the top as long as somebody's at the top and everybody else is at the bottom. And that never changed. We never evolved. We never fixed anything. It's a myth. Evolution is a myth. In this regard. Another myth in mind just came to my mind and just slipped away. I don't know. I've been talking for an hour. um, you wanna go back full circle to genocide? We can bring all of this along for the ride. I haven't heard anybody talk about this in these terms, but climate change is genocide. Climate change is genocide. I know there are very specific legal definitions of what constitutes a genocide, but those definitions they evolve over time, right? Our understanding of everything is supposed to evolve over time. Constitutions change, right? That's one thing that people cite regarding trans genocide. Well, it's not genocide because trans people are not, doesn't fit the categories. Okay, I usually approach on this video game philosophy videos, I usually approach political subjects through the lens of media analysis. I'm not doing that today, but I'm going to mention an animation that I saw recently. The Wild Robot, I think it's called. That's a dystopia, right? Doesn't look like it, but it is. And like, that's their dream. Like the far, far future, if they get what they want, the ruling class, if they get what they want, the far, far future is a communist utopia for the descendants of the 1%. And everybody else died. If they get what they want, we all die, and their descendants rule the world. Have you seen that cartoon, that animation? That's not what gave me this idea, but I saw it there and I thought, oh, that's cute. Okay. If they just if capitalists, if the people in power, they keep. Oh, there was the myth of democracy that I wanted to talk about. I might go back to it. Hold on. If they can just keep making decisions that exacerbate climate change, that actively prevents us from dealing with climate change, regardless of the consequences. Like, when does it become a genocide, right? Like, okay, if the goal is not a fucking centuries long mass extinction event, if that's not the goal, the plan isn't to kill off most of us so that they can rule over what's left. Talk about colonizing Mars, right? And then you keep making decisions that perpetuate our dependency on fossil fuels. And you keep making decisions that continue to expand our need for a exponentially increasing energy output. And you continue to make decisions that continue to deforestate and kill the topsoil. And if you know industrial agriculture doesn't work and you keep doing it, if you don't know these things and you do it, then sure, yeah, you're just being greedy. You're just being greedy, right? You're just You just have an eye on the profit, in the profit alone. Okay, you're an asshole. Fuck you. But okay. But we know these things. Right? We know these things. We know climate change is real. We know it's here. It's not coming, it's here. We are dealing with the effects. We know it's going to get worse. If having this knowledge, you continue to make these decisions, it's not just greed anymore. It's not just callous disrespect for life. It's not. You know people are going to die. You know your actions are going to kill a lot of people in the short and the long run. Right? If you have a factory, one business, and you make the decision to cut costs with safety regulations, regarding safety regulations, knowing that people are going to get hurt, knowing that people are probably going to die, and then people die. How's that not fucking murder? How's that not murder? If you make cigarettes and you know people are going to get cancer, how's that not murder? They're killing us. If you're on the board of fucking Exxon, they're killing us. If that's murder on a global scale, against that's genocide against a class. I don't think that's protected under. I don't think that's uh, included in the legal definitions of genocide, but that's what it is. You're doing it like part of your plan is killing off that class. You can hope and plan for to be insulated from the effects of your decisions and your descendants too. And everybody else is going to die as a result of your decisions. I know none of the people making these decisions are watching this video. At most, like 100 people would be watching this video. And none of them are on the top 1%. But they are killing us. That's on a global scale. That's genocide. And you get those reports of people that like they're building like insulated complexes, societies. Like they want to, what are they calling it now? Network states? Read about network states. It's fucking frightening. That's just what they want, right? Like they want to build their own fiefdoms and fuck everybody else. And they inherit the earth. I know this sounds far-fetched, insane, paranoid, but I honestly believe it's the truth. It's an actual war. What do you call that? When you have a group of people actively killing off another, like, class struggle is a war on a global scale, and they're killing us, and we're going to die. I'll just briefly mention the myth of democracy before I melt on the floor here. I think it's like if you're from the US, you just had your election, right? I'm sorry. I have a dear friend. We don't exactly talk to each other anymore, but he's still my best friend. If you're watching this, I miss you. I'm sorry. Um, and like, democracy is a myth. It's the least that they can give, as little as possible. No, it's as little agency they can give us in order to keep us compliant, just as before. Um, if you live in a country where, if you live in a democratic country, and you can't vote for whether or not your government is going to support the Palestinian genocide, how is that a democracy? Like, how much power do you really have? Just look at your country. Of course, it varies from country to country, but look at your country. Look at your government. Look at how much your vote can actually influence. When it comes to the US, like, you hear people talking about why doesn't the Democratic Party do this? Why didn't they do that? Oh, if they just did this, if Kamala Harris had just done that, they could have won. They could change things. They could, but all these arguments, all these questions, they are proposed from the point of view that that's the point of the Democratic Party. You're talking about the Democratic Party as if their goal, their objective, the point of that party was to actually win and rule and help and improve things. But that's not their point. That's not what they're there for. That's why they don't do these things. Like, sometimes it's like basic things. Like, if you're American, you know what I'm talking about better than I do. You know? Like, why did they cling to this talking point instead of that one? Why didn't they disavow this? Why didn't they support that? sometimes these questions are so obvious. Like the answers to these questions are so obvious. These things they could have done, that they should have done, are so obvious that not doing it is incompatible with the idea that their goal is to actually win, to stay in power. Like, the point, like, you can't look at the Republicans and the Democratic Party as separate institutions. They're part of the same system. They're part of the ruling class. They all get rich from being capitalists. They all gain power from supporting capitalism. They all, you know, if the Democratic Party, when they're in power, if their role is to do what the Republicans do in slow motion, it's the same party in different speeds. If they're drilling into your head and your only choices are how fast is it going to drill, you don't actually have a choice. The choice would be to stop, please. Just stop doing it. But if you can't choose that, then you don't actually have a choice. Where is the democracy? Back in Brazil, they did a fucking coup. Like, Dilma's impeachment. Did a coup, President Lula, put Bolsonaro in power. And the Workers' Party, I'm sorry, it's kind of the same thing as the Democratic Party over there. Like, I think like, they actually try to help. They actually do good things. But in the end, it doesn't matter. In the end, they're just stalling so that the other people in power can do what they want in a couple of years, or they can still get what they want just slower. And when they think you're not doing it well enough, not working with and for them well enough, they just apparently they can just take power from you. They can just do a coup, throw Lula in prison, and cut his access to the press. And then they do whatever the fuck they want, and then the Workers' Party can get into power again. But where's the democracy there? Palestine again, like, if you live in a country that's supporting Israel in any way, shape, or form, or that isn't disavowing their actions or doing everything they can to stop them, and you can't vote for your government to do that, where's the democracy there? It's a myth. I'm sorry. I'm really fucking sorry about all of this. Okay. So, this is going to be this right now, this was the end of it. Okay, the rant is over, and I'm sorry for it. Now, the rant after the rant, the post credits rant. Why did I do this? Why now? Why like this? Why like this? I'm still in my fucking uniform. I haven't. I got home and I just kind of had to do it. I wanted to write a proper script, make a proper video, but every time I tried, I just couldn't. It just made me too depressed. I just couldn't finish it. And I thought if I'm going to do it, it's gonna have to be like this. My video game philosophy videos are always like this, like ranting, like because I don't. I thought about doing it differently now, but it's always like this because I want to actually talk to you. I don't want the sanitized version. I want me there because of the nature of these subjects. And the stuff that I'm talking about today, I think it kind of deserves better than this. Like, more data on the screen, more research, better structure, an actual structure, an actual thesis, properly explained. But a part of me actually prefers it this way because of the aforementioned reasons, and a part of me just can't do it the other way, the proper version of it, because of the aforementioned reasons. So here we are. And I finally started putting out my lore videos again, but this is a gaming channel, a lore hunting channel. That's what I do because I love it and because I need it. And I think you need it too. If you're here, you needed a distraction, you need to be able to numb yourself a little bit from time to time. We can't exist in this dreadful state perpetually, otherwise we die. So yeah, I started putting out the regular videos again, but I wanted to talk about these things before the end of the year. Like, I felt the responsibility. Even though my channel is very small and this particular kind of video doesn't get a lot of views, even by my standards, I still needed to talk about it. I still, like, as small as my platform may be, I can't let it exist as a vehicle just for the white noise. I have to make sure that it doesn't ignore the channel, the platform. As small as my voice may be, it needs to acknowledge all of these things. I recently told another coworker that I may have lost the ability to actually be happy. Holidays are coming. He was showing me pictures. He was in Nagoya and pretty lights everywhere, and he was showing me the pictures, and I was like, yeah, that's all very fucking pretty. And first, that's a lot of energy, but also like he's politically engaged. Japanese people also have that problem with the language barrier, like they don't get a lot of information. it's better than the language barrier from Brazilian people, I think, but they still they can still be quite aloof uh, regarding a lot of stuff. That particular person is politically engaged. He follows up on international news stuff. So I told him, like, yes, the holidays are coming, Merry Christmas, everybody's happy. But Palestine, man, is happening. Every day, children are dying. It's not just there, but right now, that's the zeitgeist, right? How can you be happy? I don't think my, like, of course, we get ups and downs, but I kind of feel like it started like many years ago. I get depressed and then I'm getting better, and then when I'm kind of like mm, at the mid, when I reach midway, uh, and yes, I get that from World War II as well. The term, like I've always used it personally for my inside my own head. When I get to midway, when I'm feeling better enough, well enough to feel good in regards to my own personal shit, then the world comes crashing in. You know, and my own little bubble is doing well enough. The rest of it just floods in because I suddenly have the bandwidth, the mental space for it, and it just fills the space. Holy shit. And it literally keeps me awake at night and I just get depressed again. But then I'm too depressed to deal with all this shit and I have to deal with all of my shit and the cycle just keeps going and maybe I can't be happy anymore. Ah, fuck. So yes, that is 1 hour and a half, almost in 5 seconds. That is the rant for today. If you're watching this, you're probably usually here for the lore stuff. Hope you enjoy it. It's coming out. Uh, I'm going to upload. I'm going to make this public after the second part of the timeline thing comes out. I think, right? And there's more stuff in the pipeline coming next year, early next year. Hopefully in January we'll just keep going one per month. I don't know. Maybe. Um, if you're not usually here, how did you find me? Like this video? Is this what you found? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Harmy Rose. How are you doing? Sorry about everything here. Everything that's going on here. Uh, unshaved? No. I don't even know how to do makeup properly, and so no. But I try sometimes. But my hair, my uniform. Sorry for all of that. If you're new here. Mm, and yeah, even with everything that's going on out there, everywhere, um, it's true. That's not a myth. Um, how? What's the phrase in there? Okay, I'm going to use the word useless, but that's not actually the word that I want. Hope is useless, but it's necessary. Like, Hope won't fix anything. Action fix things. When we fight for things, we get things. Hope doesn't fix anything. Hope doesn't change anything, but it is also necessary. It's necessary for us to actually do the fighting. Those of us who can, I talk like that, I don't have the agency to do shit. I don't, I don't, I don't do much of anything, unfortunately. So yeah, you can still hope, no? Um, Try to forge better communities if you can. Try to find a community to fit into, you know. Uh, Most of us don't have what it takes to forge new communities, but you can still find one to be a part of, right? And we're going to need that. That's rote by now. That's what people always say, but it's still true. That's not a myth. That's not a myth. That's still true. Um, we need our communities and we need to strengthen them. And we need to brace ourselves and help each other weather this storm of bullshit. So, yeah, take care, stay safe. As always, please stay safe. Don't let my doomer fucking ass drag you down. I'm sorry. And I'll see you around. Bye.